How's it going, everybody? Mango here, and today I want to talk about the Steam Deck, specifically the first impression videos from last week and the big takeaways that I felt were a little more low-key and are worth mentioning. So let's dive right into it. Oh, and by the way, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and the subscribe button. It's free, goes a long way. Only 2% of y'all are subscribed. You boys got to eat, so just click it, please. Alrighty, anyways, so the Steam Deck is awesome. The specs on this thing are very, very solid. It houses an AMD Zen 2 CPU with 4 cores and 8 threads, and that's paired with an AMD RDNA 2 GPU. This is the same GPU in the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and this is going to be paired with 16 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM, which is the fastest RAM on the market today. That is just exciting specs. Moving along, let's talk about quickly the software. The Steam Deck is going to be running the Steam OS, and that is a Linux-based operating system. And the way you're going to be playing games on this is through a Proton compatibility layer, which essentially takes these Windows native games and it transcribes it into a Linux-compatible versions. It's very nuanced. There's going to be a link below if you want to go read it about the documentation on how this functions. It's really exciting to see that we're going to be able to play the whole Steam library through this Proton compatibility layer. Moving on from the specs and the software on the Steam Deck, let's talk about the display on the Steam Deck. This is housing a 7-inch display that is 1200 by 800 resolution. That is excellent. What's not so excellent is the panel that they are using. It is an LCD panel and not an OLED panel. So if you were expecting this to have the deep, dark, rich blacks that OLED panels have, unfortunately, it will not. Moving on from the display, I want to talk about the ergonomics of the Steam Deck. This was an area that all of the reviewers discussed, and rightfully so. This is going to be quite the massive device. You can quite literally fit a Nintendo Switch into the Steam Deck. One thing that is more surprising than that is actually the weight of the device. I think that was an area that people were making it sound like it might be too heavy. But from what the reviewers were saying, it sounds like it's going to be a relatively well-balanced device. And the 0.5 more pounds that the Steam Deck is in comparison to the Nintendo Switch is surprisingly not that much. My iPhone 11 Pro Max weighs 0.4 pounds, and putting that on top of my Nintendo Switch and holding it in one hand, that's not a lot more weight. It's going to be perfectly fine for long gaming sessions. Another area that I'm excited about is the controls on this device. It is packing a lot of controls. It's quite insane, to be honest. You have all the standards like the D-pad, the ABXY buttons, you have your bumper triggers and your normal triggers, and the joysticks. But then you also have the touch pads on the front as well as a touchscreen on the front, and you have 4 paddles on the back of the device. Oh, and there's also gyroscopic controls on the device. One thing that I thought was important to mention, though, is you will hopefully be able to disable the controls you are not using, as was pointed out by Giant Bomb in their review. So for instance, if you don't use the back paddles, you can go ahead and disable them. And so if you fat finger and click those when using the Steam Deck, it should be perfectly fine. Another area of skepticism I have per se on the controls for the device are those touch pads that they have added. Yeah, it seems cool, but it also feels a little gimmicky. If I had to be real, I use a controller or I use mouse and keyboard for gaming. I've never used touch pads in that sense, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they pull this off. Controls out of the way, the next exciting piece of information is the USB-C port. It's a universal port. I'm not sure what the proper terminology is, but it looks like you can connect USB-C hubs to this, which means that you could connect a keyboard and a mouse as well as a monitor in all at the same time. That's crazy to think about. So the fact that this has all that capability is really exciting. One thing to also mention about the USB-C port is when the Steam Deck is plugged in to power, it's not going to boost the capability of the device. So it sounds like Steam is going to have this locked in at whatever performance levels they want it at. And if you plug it in via USB-C, you're not going to see any performance boosts, which is an interesting route to take, but it's good that they have went ahead and already told us this, especially to temper everyone's expectations on that front. The other really cool feature that this device has is Bluetooth. You can connect Bluetooth controllers and also Bluetooth headphones to this device. Let's now talk about in-game boot times for the Steam Deck versus the Nintendo Switch. Giant Bomb went ahead and did a comparison between the two, and believe it or not, Steam Deck obviously won. Nintendo Switch is 5-year-old hardware, so what did you expect? But that's really cool to see, especially since the Hades on the Steam Deck would also need to go through a Proton compatibility layer conversion before it was booted up. So to see that in action is really exciting, and that it works pretty fluidly is really cool to see. The last point to take away is that this device should probably not be compared to a Nintendo Switch. I say that because the Nintendo Switch should be a console for those Nintendo titles. When it comes to indie games, playing them on the Nintendo Switch has been fun for the last few years, but I think that this device will be the definitive way of playing indie games on the go. All in all, I think the Steam Deck is shaping up to be a pretty dope console, and I'm definitely looking forward to its release in the winter, although I will have to wait till Q1 of 2022 to get mine. But such is life. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe button, all that fun stuff means a lot to me. If you stuck around this long, you're the best, and take care.